A North Carolina politician just destroyed Charlotte's hopes and dreams for transit in the city's future. That's right, North Carolina Republican House Speaker Tim Moore dismissed Charlotte's proposed $13.5 billion 2040 transportation plan for spending too much on rail, buses, and bikes, but not enough on roads and roadway expansion. Does he have a point, or is he totally off his rocker? We're going to explore. But first, I want to welcome you to the channel. I'm Mileage Mike. I used to design the world as a civil engineer, but now I travel it, exploring cities both large and small, and their various types of transportation infrastructure. Then giving my thoughts on videos like this one based on what I've seen and experienced. So hit that like button since I got you to click, and subscribe if you love it as we take a deep dive into Charlotte transit. So before we get to the House Speaker's comments, let's take a look at the current situation in regards to traffic and transit in Charlotte. Currently, Charlotte has a wheel and spoke layout to the city with the core central business district in a traditional grid-style road network, and freeways and major arterials radiating from it in various random directions. You can see on this map the layout of the freeway network, but since those are state-owned and maintained roadways, they are not a part of this city transportation plan, so we're more focused on the city's arterial roads for this video. On this map, you can see the path of many of the city's main arterial roadways. It has an impressive light rail known as the Lynx Blue Line, which runs from I-485 at the southern end of the city to the UNC Charlotte campus in the northeastern part of town. Like most major American cities, it has a bus network which operates several routes around the city, and this bus system is centralized near the center of downtown at the Charlotte Transportation Center, where it also connects to the Lynx Blue Line. Currently, the city does have some dedicated bike paths, but nothing expansive. Outside of a few limited corridors, those hoping to bike safely across most parts of the city might be up for a challenge. Charlotte, like many other Sunbelt cities, is experiencing a major population boom as Americans flee the older northern cities for the south and west. Charlotte in particular is one of the fastest growing of these southern metros. In the past 30 years alone, its population has exploded from 1.1 million in 1990 to over 2.6 million in 2020. A study by the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance projects that the Charlotte region will have a population of 4.5 million by 2050. With this type of growth incoming, Charlotte officials realize that they must plan properly for the future and act sooner than later, so as not to risk ending up like another southern city well known for its horrendous traffic and mobility issues. So the city has come up with this 2040 transportation plan detailing what they believe needs to be constructed in order to meet the mobility needs of the city's future population. What all is included in this 2040 plan? Well, it's a massive document, so I won't go through the whole thing in a video. But one of the core ideas includes what the city calls 10-minute neighborhoods. Charlotte defines this as all Charlotte households should have access to essential amenities, goods, and services within a comfortable, tree-shaded 10-minute walk, bike, or transit trip by 2040. Not all neighborhoods are expected to include every essential amenity, good, or service, but every resident should have access within a 1/2 mile walk or a 2-mile bike or transit ride. Another key development goal is Charlotte will promote moderate to higher intensity, compact, mixed-use urban development along high-performance transit lines and near separated multi-use pathways or trails. However, the biggest, most costly portion of the plan is the major expansion of the city's rail network. Charlotte has plans for a 29-mile light rail line known as the Silver Line, which will travel east-west across the city from Belmont in Gaston County through the Charlotte Douglas Airport to Uptown, through East Charlotte, and end at the Central Piedmont Community College Levine campus in Matthews. This line is by far the most expensive portion of the entire plan, coming in at a whopping $9 billion. It calls for a 25-mile commuter rail line known as the Red Line, which will head north from Uptown to the affluent Lake Norman suburban towns of Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson. Then there is a proposed 5.5-mile extension of the Blue Line from I-485 southeast to the Ballantyne neighborhood. And lastly, it proposes to extend the Lynx Gold Line streetcar from Plaza Midwood down Central Avenue towards the old Eastland Mall area. These vast rail expansions, in tandem with the significant expansions in the city's bike lane, trail, and bus networks, are what the city hopes will help facilitate its goals of 10-minute neighborhoods and more dense development within its boundaries. The overall plan does also include funding for roads, but around 80% of it is dedicated to non-road related infrastructure. Now, of course, the first glaring issue with all of this is the cost. It's easy to come up with ideas, but how to pay for them is usually the hardest part. The cost of all of this, $13.5 billion. How does Charlotte plan to pay for it? Well, the city is planning a 50-50 split in financing between it and state and federal funds, particularly hoping to obtain funding from the recently passed $2 trillion infrastructure law. Charlotte plans to raise money by putting a 1-cent sales tax increase for transit on the ballot in November, and that's where the good speaker Tim Moore comes in. In order for Charlotte to even put this proposed tax increase on the ballot, it requires approval from the North Carolina State Legislature. And if it can't obtain state approval, then Charlotte will either be forced to scale back its plans or raise property taxes in order to finance them. Which brings us to the next issue. What exactly were the House Speaker's concerns about the city's transportation plans? Let's take a direct look at what he had to say. Upon a recent visit to the city, Moore said, "I think we really need to be looking at road construction. If you get out and you drive anywhere, and 95% of the people are driving a car, they are not riding a bike. They are not riding a bus. I think bus ridership after COVID is at abysmally low levels. What I want to see us talk about when we talk about transportation is not more of these bike lanes, not more of the rail that costs so much, that really only serves a limited purpose. We need to increase the capacity when it comes to our roads and thoroughfares. You immediately pull out in a street and you are in gridlock. That doesn't need to happen. We've actually got some areas where lanes have been eliminated and put in for bike lanes. No one is on a bike and you can't get in cars in that area. At the end of the day, when it comes to transportation funding, it has to be responsive to what the needs are. It needs to be focused on not trying to transform people's habits and get them to do something different. If you put in more bike lanes, that doesn't mean people are going to ride the bikes to work. That's not going to happen. You need to build and expand the roads because we are driving cars. Woo! So there you have it. Moore pretty much obliterated the primary focus of Charlotte's transportation plan. Bear in mind that Moore himself is from the Charlotte area, a nearby suburb known as Kings Mountain. So with all that being said, the next question is, does the speaker have a point? First, let's talk about the current transit use. When it comes to buses, the ridership levels are down to their lowest ever. Levels peaked in 2013 and have been in decline ever since, with a huge drop-off during the pandemic that it has yet to rebound from. Then if we look at the current light rail network, while it has definitely transformed the South End neighborhood into an economic powerhouse of development, and is currently transforming areas on the northern extension such as Noda and University City, ridership levels are at 13,000 per weekday, still down to less than half of March 2019's levels of 30,000 per weekday. In stark contrast with the roadways, which have all quickly recovered to their March 2019 levels of use. Bear in mind that these numbers are for March 2022, when gas was upwards of $4 per gallon. It seems that these high prices still couldn't get people to use the city's transit services. So to be honest, if we're strictly looking at the data, the speaker does appear to have a point. However, here are my thoughts on the whole situation. While it does appear that people in Charlotte have a strong preference for driving even in the face of $4 per gallon gas and congestion, the thing is that there really aren't many roads to expand in Charlotte. In Charlotte, most of the congested arterial roads such as South Boulevard, Providence Road, and Central Avenue can't be expanded. Many of those roadways go through areas that are either heavily developed or wealthy areas that will sue you into oblivion for even attempting to expand the roads. A few roadways such as University City Boulevard and Harris Boulevard could reasonably be expanded, as well as the much needed expansion of Steel Creek Road southwest of Uptown and West Boulevard to help relieve Interstate 77. But for the most part, I don't see too many areas for feasible roadway expansion. Looking at the ridership data, there does appear to be some interest in rail from the people, but here is the question of cost versus benefit. Is the cost to build the rail worth the amount of people who will ride it? Or would more people benefit from more road capacity? Up to this point, the light rail has been more of an economic benefit than a mobility benefit and hasn't really had much impact on roadway congestion. But there are some beliefs that if the rail network were more expansive, then more people would use it. The bus thing is a tough nut to crack. Ridership is definitely atrocious at the moment, and as someone who lived in Charlotte for 13 years, I can say that it rarely, if ever, crossed my mind to go anywhere utilizing the bus though I have ridden on it a few times just to check it out. Another issue that my non-American viewers might not understand is the social stigma in America around riding a bus. Many Americans see buses as being for poor people, and the last thing that most Americans want to do is appear to be poor. Yes, that is true. Charlotte City Council member Julie Eiselt believes the solution to the bus problem is more frequent buses. For example, if the bus came more frequently to where you knew you would only need to wait at most 10 minutes for a bus, then more people will ride it. However, is it really a question of frequency, or have people at this point found other ways of getting around? Sounds like the city is willing to take that gamble and find out. Overall, personally, I'm skeptical about the buses, but I think the rail is worth a shot, mainly due to the limited room for railway expansion and the local interest in rail. But also at over $9 billion, that cost is tough to swallow. For comparison's sake, if I recall, the future expansion of Interstate 77 is projected to cost around $2 billion. That's less than a quarter of the cost of building the Silver Line. But also, a city of 4.5 million, I believe, is best served by taking a multi-pronged approach to mobility for its citizens. Because at those levels, you really can't move people around efficiently with a single mode of transportation. Despite the speaker's comments, many in Charlotte still believe they can get the sales tax increase on the ballot. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. What do you guys think? Do you think Charlotte's plan is a good idea? Or do you agree with the House Speaker? Or are you somewhere in the middle? Do you ride the bus, a bike, or rail lines in your city? If not, why not? What would your city need to do in order to get you to use their transit? Let me know what you think in the comments, especially if you are from the Charlotte area. See you on the next trip coming soon to a town near you.